Good morning. Welcome all to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Urbana-Champaign. My name is Rev Sally, and I am the Associate Minister of this congregation. We're a church of many different theologies and identities, united by our shared commitments to building community, seeking inspiration, promoting justice, and finding peace. We're still asking that everyone remain masked while we gather on Sunday mornings because we want to be able to welcome even the most vulnerable into our worship space. Be aware that if you're nervous about being packed into the sanctuary in this quite crowded Sunday morning, I will say, we do have spillover room just across the entryway in our fellowship hall where the service is being live streamed on our projector. That space is also great if you just want to stretch your legs, enjoy a little more wiggle room, or a relaxed space. We're a congregation of all ages, which means we embrace all the noises and chit-chat and little disruptions that our kids can bring into a Sunday morning. And as always, you're welcome to get a coloring kit from the box in the entryway just near where the color-coded COVID lanyards are. And after the time for all ages, kids will be invited to head downstairs with their teachers for religious exploration. Whether this is your first Sunday with us or your 1,000th, whether you're here in the sanctuary, over in Fellowship Hall, or watching from afar online, know that this service is here for you. May you find in it something that you need. This congregation has long chosen to begin our Sundays with a formal acknowledgement of the indigenous peoples of this land. It's a practice that connects us to the history of this specific place and our role as stewards and members of community that extend beyond our own present moment. Today's entire service is, in a way, a deepening and expanding of this long-time practice of ours, as we take the upcoming Thanksgiving holiday as a chance to reflect on the complicated and grim history of our nation and reapproach humbly the question of what a healthy and humane relationship to this land would actually look like. We'll be hearing as inspiration some of the work of author and scientist Robin Wall Kimmerer, who has been read by many in this congregation, whose research and writing are heartfelt calls to embrace indigenous ways of knowing. Wherever you are joining us from today, take a moment now to let your mind sink down into the deep history of that land, to honor the plants, animals, and people who have belonged to it over the millennia. Here on Green Street, we worship on the land of the Kaskaskia, Miamia, Bodwaydwami, Kickapoo, Peoria, and Oceti-Sakowin. These are communities that still exist today and continue to fight for recognition, self-determination, and the preservation of our shared earth. We'll pause to take a breath in honor of all those lives and as a reminder to support their ongoing efforts wherever we can. Thank you. And now I will invite two new UUCUC members, Jeannie and Joe, to come forward and help light our flaming chalice, symbol of our Unitarian Universalist tradition.
We light our flaming chalice, symbol of Unitarian Universalism, whenever we gather, marking out this time and place as special. If you have a chalice or candle to light at home, please do so. We light our flame with these words written by UU minister Reverend Wendy Jones.
Mother Earth's love letter to humanity. I want to say to you that I can breathe again. My lungs are opening up. The trees are my lungs. The animals are my fingers. They are my senses. The rocks are my grounding. What are humans to you, I ask? Are we the virus, the infection, the cancer? The humans are my beloved. The humans are my children. Humans are my eyes and my ears, my self-knowledge and my expression of life. The humans are not my disease. They are simply asleep, and once they wake up, they will be my biggest ally and source of strength, and they will be my own renewal and awakening. The humans have it within them to be my soul and my salvation.
Thank you both. Thank you all. And now I will invite us to please rise if you are comfortable doing so and join in singing hymn number 1010 in the teal hymnal, We Give Thanks, which we'll sing through twice, led by MR.
We will sing through it twice, and I want to give great thanks to the choir today for opening us in service. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day, for all gathered here and those far away, for this time we share with love and care. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day. Oh, we give thanks, for this precious day, for all gathered here and those far away, for this time we share with love and care. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day.
Beautiful. So you may not know, but this past week has been Trans Awareness Week. We're actually going to end the week tonight with a candlelight vigil right here in our sanctuary, open to all in honor of Trans Day of Remembrance. And trans is short for transgender, which is the same prefix as in the words transform or transcend. So it means something like across gender, through gender, or even beyond gender. And gender just means, well, someone's boyness or girlness or otherness. Some people's gender doesn't line up with how other people see them. Sometimes a boy will be born in a body that makes other people think he's a girl, sometimes vice versa. That's what it means to be transgender. And some people don't fit into boy or girl at all. That's another way to be trans. Sometimes people who aren't boys or girls will identify as non-binary, agender, gender fluid, or just gender non-conforming. And Unitarian Universalism, when we're at our best, is a tradition that is willing to change our ways of being in the world when we learn new things. Over the centuries, we have changed a lot about ourselves as a tradition, but even when we're willing to change, it still takes time and multiple steps to get there. So today's Time for All Ages in our service isn't a story or a puppet show, it's a hands-on activity. Together, we're going to take one of those many steps toward inclusion. Have any of you ever been told not to write in books? Especially books that don't belong to you, and especially not in pen. Well, today we are going to write in our hymnals. You see, once upon a time, a long, long time ago, in the 60s, Unitarian Universalists came up with a list of our sources of inspiration, and we included in that list the words and deeds of prophetic men from history. People like Martin Luther King Jr., Gandhi, Thoreau, and Emerson. That was as important to us as the Bible. And well, in the 80s, not quite so long ago, some very fed up UU women pointed out that there was something missing from that phrasing. So we changed it to the words and deeds of prophetic women and men from history. Now we could include Abigail Adams, Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, and Judith Sargent Murray. Then, about 10 years ago now, some very fed up non-binary UUs pointed out that there was still something missing. What about people who didn't fit in the category of men or the category of women, but still had prophetic words and deeds? So the National Association of All UUs voted and officially changed to the words and deeds of prophetic people from history. Seems so simple, so obvious, like we could have figured that out from the beginning. So now we can include non-binary and genderqueer people from history, like the public universal friend, my favorite non-binary Quaker from the 1700s, or the late, great Alandria Williams, a recent UU leader who championed trans, disability, and racial justice in our movement. But all of these hymnals in our sanctuary, which have our principles and sources of inspiration printed in the front pages, are now out of date. So we are going to open them up and in permanent ink, officially make our commitment to gender inclusion right there in black and white. So you'll want to grab the nearest copy of the gray hymnal and turn to one of the earliest pages. They're not numbered, so it's hard to tell you where. But the principles and sources are listed there on the left panel. It begins, "We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote." So flip through trying to find that. And help your neighbor if they're having trouble too. You'll want to go down the page to the bit that starts, "The living tradition we share draws from many sources," and find words and deeds of prophetic women and men. Are we finding it? All right, then you know what to do. We're going to cross out women and men and write in people. Now, if you're anything like me, this feels scandalously transgressive. Writing in a book, especially in pen, especially a book in church. But consider the symbolism of this change. There is no future in which we are going to want to erase this. There is no future in which we are going to want to go back on our commitments to our trans and non-binary community members. So why not write it in pen? I'm watching for the pages to stop flipping. Yeah, feel free to grab a couple of hymnals if you're a very efficient editor. Is it? Oh, well, that's too many. We'll have to do that a different Sunday. Exactly, yeah. All right. Obviously, we will continue to make this change. Someone just pointed out it's in the teal hymnal, too, which I didn't even realize. But this is an ongoing effort, and I don't just mean we're going to continue to hunt down hymnals and make the edit. It's an ongoing effort, and may we continue to change and update our language and our beliefs as we encounter new people and perspectives. May we always, always be willing to make room and lift up those among us who haven't yet been heard. May we honor the words and deeds of our ancestors, our children, and our siblings. And may we do this in all things, even the sacred written texts we were taught not to touch. Thank you for helping to make this change. Thank you for participating in this hands-on and scandalous activity together. And with that, we will move on to singing our children downstairs to their classes, but we're going, oh, I'm seeing a wave. Oh, okay. We're going to sing the children down to their classes, but we are going to actually take a pause and take the time to try and reteach ourselves the song that we traditionally used to sing the children out. We sang it a lot before COVID, and after COVID, we've been trying to just jump right in as if we could get the hang of this, frankly, quite difficult little melody. So I've asked MR to just walk us through it one more time, and then we'll sing the children down with the volunteers.
MR also had to learn it because they did not know it. So Juan is going to help us, and we're going to sing 2 measures at a time. It's 4/14 in this one, if you want to look at it too. As we leave this friendly place. That sounds pretty comfortable, yeah? Okay. Do you want me to sing the next phrase and then we'll continue, or do you want to do it together? All right. So let's just start from the beginning again. As we leave this friendly place, love give light to every face. Can we see if I know the next one? May the kindness which we learn, not bad, light our hearts till we return. I did it. Let's do it twice through together from the beginning. Ready? And kids, get ready to go. As we leave this friendly place, love give light to every face. May the kindness which we learn light our hearts till we return. As we leave this friendly place, love give light to every face. May the kindness which we learn light our hearts till we return. Thank you.
Each Sunday here at UUCUC, we make space to share the joys and sorrows we are carrying with us. We usually take a long pause with music to give folks time to write down the personal joys and sorrows that they wish to share, either on a card or in an email message to joysandsorrows@uucuc.org. Then the worship leader reads out those shared messages so that we can celebrate each other's joyful news and support each other's grief. During the pause, while folks are writing and music is playing, those who wish to can also come forward and silently light a candle here on our altar table. Together, we'll hear our blessing song, Long Time Son, and while Juan plays and we all sing, you're invited to write the joys and sorrows you would like to share, either on a card in the back of your pew or at the central back table, or sending on your phone via email. And if you wish to, you can come forward to light a candle for your joy or sorrow and leave your card here in the basket. please continue coming forward to light candles. I'm going to begin reading our shared joys and sorrows. A joy sent in by Paul Kaiser. Joy for all the love and help Beth Simpson has received during her first year of stroke recovery. A year ago today, November 20th, Beth was on the floor, alone, confused. Thanks to all your care and support and Beth's daily hard work, we've made it another trip around the sun. Shazam. A joy from David Gross. Today, November 20th, is my 79th birthday. Today is President Joe Biden's 80th birthday. I am retired. Joe Biden is still employed. From Anthony Brienza. Joy that my mom is out of the hospital and getting stronger. Also joy that she will soon move into a safer environment with the proper care. A sorrow from Sam Bashir's. Sorrow for yet another shooting. Mourning for Club Q and the people there in Colorado Springs. From Kelly, sharing a sorrow for all the students, teachers, and parents who continue to experience traumatic disruptions to education at Urbana High School. May our world find a way to create safety for those who have already had to endure so much. From Jerry Carden and Tim Temple. We are terribly upset and angered to learn of another shooting at an LGBTQ nightclub, this one in Colorado. On the other hand, it makes me thankful to enjoy another birthday this Wednesday. From Julia Freeman. On October 23rd, surrounded by friends and family, I married my partner of 9 years. From Mia Trevino. Happy first heavenly birthday to my Uncle Bill. From Abrita. My first visit to the sanctuary today. I am so excited and grateful. From Mick McEnroe. It's a joy to be back in the sanctuary after a long time away. From MR. As small as it may seem, marking the hymnals, crossing out women and men was amazingly powerful for me as a non-binary person. Thank you. Thank you so much. From Lynn Wiley. Joy that brother-in-law Neil traveled to France to meet his new grandson, Elio. From Melissa Shepline. A joy that MR has revived the children's choir. It's joyous to hear all ages singing. It is. From Madhu and, I'm sorry, I can't read your handwriting. I do apologize. Our sister-in-law Uma in India as she undergoes therapy. Prayers to Uma. From Elizabeth Simpson. This is the November 20th when I first experienced stroke. Now, a year later, I sing, I sing, I sing. To Pam from Lan. 51 years of marriage, what a trip. Happy anniversary, my dear. From Peggy Patton and Todd Kinney. During this season of Thanksgiving, we are grateful for the efforts of our ministers and lay leaders, including the important transition and settled minister search teams. Thanks for all you do for our UUCUC community. From Elizabeth. I was hit by a car this morning leaving work. Both me and the other driver were safe. Ugh. From Gail. Happy birthday to Joe Biden, now officially our oldest. And a joy of my own to share. that my youngest niece, Phoebe Jost, was born 3 weeks ago, November 1st, and both she and her mother are doing well. Thank you to all who contributed your prayers and well wishes when I announced that she was being born. For all the joys and sorrows that remain unspoken, may they be held by this community all the same. Know that you are part of something, a network of love that connects you to everyone who's gathered here, everyone who has gathered here week after week and year after year. May you feel held up and supported by that love, today and always. Now please take this moment of quiet prayer or meditation to find your own center, find your own words, asking for what you need. As the music plays, let us breathe together and rest in the stillness.
Good morning. I'm Jenny Hunt, and I'm honored to share the reading with you this morning. Our reading is from Braiding Sweetgrass, a book by author, mother, scientist, professor, and member of the Citizen Potawatomi Nation, Robin Wall Kimmerer. She writes, "By creation stories everywhere, cosmologies are a source of identity and orientation to the world. They tell us who we are. We are inevitably shaped by them, no matter how distant they may be from our consciousness. On one side of the world were people whose relationship with the living world was shaped by Sky Woman, who created a garden on the turtle's back for the well-being of all. On the other side was another woman with a garden and a tree. But for tasting its fruit, she was banished from the garden, and the gates clanged shut behind her. In order to eat, she was instructed to subdue the wilderness into which she was cast. And then they met, the offspring of Sky Woman and the children of Eve. The land around us bears the scars of that meeting, the echoes of our stories. It's not just the land that is broken, but more importantly, our relationship to the land. In the Western tradition, there is a recognized hierarchy of being, with, of course, the human being on the top. The pinnacle of evolution, the darling of creation, and the plants at the bottom. But in native ways of knowing, human people are often referred to as the younger brothers of creation. We must look to our teachers among the other species for guidance. Their wisdom is apparent in the way that they live. They teach us by example. They've been on the earth far longer than we have been and have had time to figure things out. When Sky Woman arrived here, it was through her actions of reciprocity, the give and take with the land, that she, the original immigrant, became indigenous. For all of us, becoming indigenous to a place means taking care of the land as if our lives, both material and spiritual, depended on it, living as if your children's future mattered. To be native to a place, we must learn to speak its language. Can we learn to understand Sky Woman and indigenous wisdom, not as artifacts from the past, but as instructions for the future? Can a nation of immigrants once again follow her example to become native, to make a home?
We, as UUs, acknowledge that our circle of care doesn't stop here in our church building. We are deeply connected to the community we find ourselves in and to the wider world. Please continue to keep an eye on our weekly e-news newsletter for opportunities to show up, to find support for yourself, to get involved, and to be part of this community. Today, during fellowship hour, we'll be saying our official goodbye to Avalon Ruby, our church AV tech, who is up in the loft right now, with a goodbye cake and a chance to write a note and sign a card thanking Avalon for their year-plus of service with us as she gets ready to move on from her position here. If you've ever watched a service online or from Fellowship Hall, you have Avalon to thank for it. And while they can't come down from the loft mid-service, I would like to present a gift from the congregation, which is a beautiful little hand-carved bamboo chalice that is collapsible for travel convenience, and a beeswax candle, which smells incredible. We are so grateful to you, and it's our hope that you keep a little flame burning and remember us wherever you go from here. Also, after church today, after you've had your slice of cake and signed your card, Todd Kinney will be leading a history tour of the church building, leaving from the welcome table near the front doors. Whether you're new here or just curious to poke around in the back staircases of the church, please follow him for a very engaging time. Later this evening, as I said earlier, we're hosting a community-wide Trans Day of Remembrance vigil here in the sanctuary, which begins at 5:30 p.m. Finally, the Thanksgiving holiday, as we know, is this Thursday. And if you don't have family in town, or if you are looking for a chance to be around other people, or get away from the family you do have in town, I will be here in Fellowship Hall from 10 to 11 a.m. on Thanksgiving Day, offering an informal coffee and cornbread communion. We'll gather in the hall, eat, drink, and have a few readings, songs, and reflections together before going our separate ways for the afternoon. All are welcome. There's no need to register. Each Sunday, as part of our recognition of our very real interdependence on each other, we pass the plate and share our offering with an organization doing the work of justice in the world. This month in November, we're sharing our plate with the School of the Americas Watch, which is a long-standing project aimed at spotlighting and fighting the negative effects of our nation's military and covert practices on the people and lands of Central America. School of the Americas Watch works in solidarity with indigenous communities and migrant rights organizations to try to make a real difference in the causes of the so-called border crisis in our nation. You can give by text or through the online portal on our website, or if you're here in the sanctuary, the basket will be passed and checks can be made out to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Urbana-Champaign. Half of what you give will go towards sustaining the work of this congregation. Half will go directly to the School of the Americas Watch. I invite you to give whatever is generous for you, whatever that means, and know that anything you contribute is gratefully received and put to use, making a real impact for people who need it. May the basket be passed. Thank you all. Now, I usually don't claim to have access to secret knowledge, but I do have access to how long my sermon is. So I'll just reiterate that I am not offended if you need to get up and stretch or go take a bathroom break, because we might go about 5 or 10 minutes over today. You are free to leave at any time. You are not trapped here. But I did write a lot this time. So the book Braiding Sweetgrass, which we read from earlier, thank you, Jenny, begins with an anecdote from the author's experience teaching in an undergrad ecology classroom. She made a habit of surveying her new students, asking them what they know already of the negative interactions between humans and the environment. And given that almost all of her 200-person classroom were scientists headed for careers in environmental protection, they could come up with a lot of examples. Toxins in the air and water, factory farms, oil sands, suburban sprawl, habitat loss, climate change, etc., etc. Then she would ask them about what examples they had of positive interactions between humans and environment, ways humans have benefited the land, and there would be a chilling silence, or only a few tentative hands raised after a while. And Kimmerer, the author, doesn't tell this story to shame her students, quite the opposite. She admires that they're able to see all the environmental crises happening around them. She tells the story and she asks those questions to highlight the mismatch in their ability to answer them. The sheer volume of stories for the negative compared to the positive. And how many of us gathered here today would be in the same boat as Kimmerer's students? Very ready with examples of harm humans have done and less ready with examples of benefit. I am certainly in that boat. I don't know about you. But it's partly why this book was such a ground-shaking read for me and why I wanted to share it with everyone here. Kimmerer writes of her students, as their land becomes impoverished, so too does the scope of their vision. We cannot be what we cannot see, and if we struggle to think of even a single example of humans living in harmony with our planet, how can we expect the next generation to find a way toward that ultimate goal of harmony and sustainability? We can't be what we can't see, so where do we look if we want to see an Earth in harmony with humanity? Kimmerer, a scientist, a teacher, and a member of the Citizen Potawatomi Nation, says that we should look to indigenous peoples. Remember back in spring 2020 when COVID first hit and the world shut down? Carbon emissions suddenly plummeted as commuters stayed home. Shipping was disrupted. Wild animals started being spotted wandering deserted city streets. There was a kind of wonder to it. There was rhetoric here and there, implying or outright saying that humanity was the real virus, the Earth was healing, or even that COVID was the Earth's immune system fighting against the infection of humankind on its surface. Is that something you remember hearing or reading? And feeling? Yeah. When I read Kimmerer's story of her students and their one-sided answers to her questions, this is what I thought of. How the relief of seeing a bit of environmental recovery turned so easily into a bitter kind of self-flagellating reflection on humanity. We're so awful, we deserve this. As if the deaths of millions of vulnerable people was somehow made right and good, a blow struck in the war between humanity and the Earth. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to be on the side of the Earth. But what if what the Earth actually needs is for us to stop thinking that Earth and humanity are on different sides? What Kimmerer begs her students and her readers to consider is a worldview in which we are not the virus, the cancer, the disease. We are the Earth's children, and we have it in us to be a harmonious part, even a useful and necessary part of the Earth's overall balance. It has been done before, and the path is not closed to us if we're willing to find it again. It is my hope this Sunday before Thanksgiving to not just nod to the history of indigenous people in this land, but to seriously consider the ways that current indigenous wisdom can and should reshape the most basic assumptions at the foundation of Western thought. Can we learn to see indigenous ways of knowing not as historical artifacts, but as potential instructions for the future? If you are someone who has struggled with climate despair before or had the thought that humans are just too greedy, too violent, too inherently destructive to ever live sustainably among other species, this service is for you. I am you. And I want us to spend some time holding that feeling up to the light and considering that it might not be the objective, dispassionate, culturally neutral belief it pretends to be. It comes from somewhere. And there are other ways of seeing humanity, other ways of being as a species that could still be available to us. And if you've never had that feeling or thought that humans are destroying the world, amazing, please stay. We definitely need you, and I'm very interested in hearing more about your spiritual journey and where you find your inspiration and your strength. So let's just take a moment to pause and interrogate where that feeling comes from, that despairing belief that humans are dangerous and destructive, that spiral that pulls us into hopelessness for our relationship with our environment. Just like Kimmerer's students, part of it comes from direct experience, knowledge. We're surrounded by hard evidence of the negative effects humans have had on our biosphere. But some of it also comes from a deeper place, something more cosmological or theological. I can't help but hear echoes of the old Puritan righteous judgment. We're all sinners in the hand of an angry God. We're all polluters in the hand of an angry planet. They're both making sense of suffering by telling ourselves that we deserve it. The reading we heard earlier contrasts the creation myths and cosmologies of two different cultures. An indigenous cosmology in which humanity learns from its older siblings, the plants and animals, who know better how to live in the world. And the Abrahamic cosmology in which humanity is given dominion over God's lesser creations. But the worldview I've been talking about, that of Kimmerer's ecology students, certainly doesn't frame us as the darlings of creation, as the Genesis story tells, the rightful masters of all other living things. More like the opposite, where we humans are lesser than, a corrupting force that dirties and ruins the balance. So does that mean it's unrelated to the lingering influence of that old story, Genesis, its hierarchical understanding of creation? Maybe, but there's still a distinct touch of hubris in thinking that humanity is some kind of arch villain, thinking of us as nature's nemesis instead of its master. Because more importantly, why are we still thinking of ourselves as separate from the rest of the natural world? Why is it so easy to think of our species as inherently at odds with our environment in a way no other species is? Even though I was never raised with a belief in the Bible or the Christian creation hierarchy, I was raised in a society built by generations of believers. And that division between nature and man has been written deeply into every lens I've been taught to look through when I try to understand the world. It doesn't actually make sense to believe that we alone are somehow fundamentally incompatible with life on Earth. We are earthlings. We have a place in the ecosystem. That's how evolution works. Not to say that Earth is a conflict-free paradise. I mean, extinction happens. But it's not as if humanity appeared fully formed and unrelated to the complex network of life out of which we emerged. The recent history of humanity is certainly one of extreme overconsumption and alienation from other species, but that is not our whole history. It's not even our whole present. I said earlier that it's easy to despair because we've all seen hard evidence of the negative effects humans have on our biosphere. But the word humans is doing a lot of work in that sentence. Because is it really the negative effect of humans? Or is it some humans from a very specific, very small slice of history? Humans who have come to rely on extractive technologies. Humans who have structured our societies in such a way that resources flow in one direction with no expectation or practice of reciprocity or sustainability beyond the current generation. Are humans inherently destructive? Just because we're the first species to invent the combustion engine or the nuclear bomb doesn't mean we are somehow unnatural. not a part of our environment. And seeing ourselves that way is part of what's fueling this defeatist rush toward total collapse, this hopelessness. If we find it easy to believe that humans are inherently destructive or exploitative, we ought to consider that it might be because we live in a moment in a culture born out of destruction and exploitation. If we feel humans are inherently alienated from our natural environment, it might be because we inherited our understandings of the world from thinkers who felt the earth was a wilderness needing to be subdued, from pilgrims who arrived on these shores with no knowledge of the land and no interest in learning its ways. It's hard work to be able to get outside yourself and realize that your perspective is culturally specific, not any more clear-eyed or objective than anyone else's. The good news is that if this view of things is specific to our particular time and place and people, then that means that there are other ways, other times, places, and people we can look to for a more hopeful vision of our species' potential. Our country is about to celebrate Thanksgiving, a holiday based on a heavily mythologized story in which the Wampanoag community rescued European settlers from starvation on the eastern coast of this continent. The events of that story, in which European settlers tried and failed to use European hunting and planting methods in this unfamiliar land, and Wampanoag families showed them how to plant and harvest native foods, are often told as a one-time moment of cross-cultural charity, a gift. Through a different lens, it was an opportunity, an invitation for the settlers to learn something, to change themselves, to be humble enough to see themselves as the younger sibling to those who had been there longer and could show them how to change their ways and engage in a new way of living. How to be changed by the land rather than insisting the land change for them. It was a lesson that those settlers declined to learn. They and those who followed them would not have it in them to be creation's little brother. They were creation's chosen masters. And this land and its many people still bear the scars of that failure to learn. This makes me feel that Thanksgiving is the perfect time of year to remember that we might still humble ourselves enough to consider that there are still other ways of being, that those ways of being might be our best hope for survival. The specifics of indigenous ways or indigenous traditions are as diverse and varied as any cross-section of humanity. All kinds of different religious beliefs, social roles, food staples, rituals, community structures can be counted as indigenous. So when I say indigenous, I want to be clear what I'm talking about. Because there isn't a magic ingredient or mystical gene that exists across indigenous groups and makes them special. I'm not trying to argue some updated version of the noble savage, or the notion that a history of being subjugated and oppressed somehow makes the people more pure or worthy. Indigenous just means being of the land in a way that carries more meaning than simply how many generations have lived in a place. Indigenous communities are those that have allowed their long presence in a place to shape them, who have grown entwined with the specific rhythm, gifts, and needs of a specific place. So the ways and stories of indigenous people are as different from one another as between any group of humans, because they are as different as the various bioregions that humans have settled in. It can look like tribes in the Northwest organizing their year around the return of the salmon, lighting celebratory bonfires at the head of the river each year for centuries until the fires become one of the landmarks that the fish use to navigate. It can look like plains tribes holding prairie grasses sacred, and the bison always having something to eat when they migrate through. It can look like Great Lakes communities harvesting wild rice from the water and leaving half of it behind to feed the fish and ducks and reseed for next year. Robin Wall Kimmerer says that being indigenous means taking care of the ecosystem you're in as if the whole thing is necessary for your physical and spiritual survival and that of your grandchildren. Living as if there is no other place you could pack up and move to if this one becomes damaged or depleted. as if the land is part of you. She asks if a nation of immigrants can learn to be naturalized, to transform into people who learn from the land they're on and make a true home there. And this becoming naturalized isn't about intruding on existing Native communities, wearing feathers or claiming a heritage that isn't yours, or trying to recreate spiritual practices you haven't been invited into. Just like the transcendentalists transformed the Christian tradition by believing that everyone had equal access to God, Kimmerer points out that anyone can get to know the land. You don't have to attend a powwow or learn to speak Anishinaabe in order to get to know and care for the land you are standing on, the trees you walk past every day, the rhythms of prairie flower pollinators. All it takes is humility, willingness to listen, and to actually change how you understand your own role in relation to those other beings. To be indigenous, to be naturalized, is to be humble in your relationship to this specific environment, to be of the land and not on the land, to try less to carry your food and traditions and cosmology to a new land and apply it there like a coat of paint or a stick of dynamite. But leave them where they came from and be open to adopting new practices based on what your new land teaches you over generations. So many of the traditions we celebrate are carried over from other lands. People in sunny Florida and California staple rolls of fake snow on their homes for Christmas. And we ship Mexican poinsettia flowers up here to decorate. And it's not that those are bad traditions, not at all. It's more just, once you start to look, isn't it odd that traditions initially meant to celebrate the rhythms of the year, heat and cold, dark and light, are exported and applied everywhere, regardless of our actual local rhythms? Even the Thanksgiving meal, supposedly celebrating the bountiful harvest, has everyone across this huge continent eating turkey, potatoes, and cranberries, when perhaps a more genuine celebration of the local harvest would mean eating lobster in New Hampshire, salmon in Washington, acorn bread here in the Midwest, cattail greens and wild rice at the Great Lakes, and pecan pie only in the South. Kimmerer, in one section, lifts up New England towns' maple festivals as an example of letting the land shape our civic and social lives rather than the other way around. And she suggests new geographic understandings of America based not on state boundaries or on traditional tribal lands, but on the ecology that defines the rhythms of life in each region. Maple Nation, she calls it, Bison Nation, Salmon Nation, and so forth. Not to say that all our specific immigrant idiosyncrasies and traditions should be dropped, not at all. I fully intend to dance around the Christmas tree with my Danish in-laws, shouting a semi-coherent Danish carol every chance I get. And I know Swedish family members who will hide a pickle ornament in the Christmas tree for the rest of time, as far as I can tell. It's more that it's worth noticing how much of our identities and practices have a center of gravity elsewhere, rather than being rooted in a deep understanding or connection to this place and the animals and plants that we are intertwined with here. There's a distance and alienation, a separateness, which I think I had never fully seen before until I managed to pause and hear an indigenous author point out that not everyone lives that way. That's not an all humans thing. It's a culturally and historically specific thing. I'm afraid to say that I'm not going to end today with a clear call to action. I'm sorry. Because it's more a call to perspective. I know that I prefer to preach more concrete sermons, and ideally with a practice you can take out into the world immediately. I'm a practical person at heart. I rolled my own eyes at overly abstract sermons in my own day. But the truth is, this subject is still working its way through me, through my own spirit. My own perspective is in the process of shifting. So I'm not to the point of knowing exactly what it means in practical terms to revive and champion indigenous ways as a possible future for humanity amid climate disaster. But now I can say, when I start to feel like it's hopeless, humans destroy everything we touch, I used to just think, well, sad but true. Now I can think, sad but also maybe not true. That thought feels like everything right now. I've never been so happy to realize I could be totally wrong. The reminder that there are other ways of being, that it's never too late to learn humility, is exactly what I needed. The big cosmological and theological conflicts can rage on. Are humans inherently good, inherently corrupt? Are we just animals following our drives to our own destruction? Or are we just animals who, like all Earth's animals, have a role to fill in an infinitely complex web of interdependent life forms and seasonal patterns? A role that we could figure out and can aim ourselves toward. And the first step is to learn to see differently, to listen closely, and to refill our impoverished imaginations with the possibilities that indigenous peoples have been living all along. May it come to pass. May it be so. Amen. And I'll ask you to please stand if standing is comfortable and join in singing hymn number 317, We Are Not Our Own. Thank you. You may be seated. Let us make thanksgiving, and with justice, willing and aware, give to earth and all things living liturgies of care. We are not our own, earth forms us. We are not alone, earth names us. May the trees be her lungs, may the animals be her senses, the rocks be her grounding, and may the humans be her children, her sense of self and her salvation. Amen. As we close our time today and prepare to go back out into the world, may we go in peace and with hearts wide open and humble to all this world and her many species have to teach us. Let us extinguish our chalice with our familiar words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.